Welcome back. Senate Republicans making a last-ditch effort to repeal Obamacare, and Democrats are coming out in full force against the proposal as GOP lawmakers get closer to the number of votes maybe needed to pass it. Republicans say the Graham-Cassidy bill would give more power to the states, something that Senator Lindsey Graham says the Democrats fear.
They're worried about the power leaving Washington going to the states. If you're a Bernie believer, this is your worst nightmare, because I take the money and power out of Washington and I let states decide this, but you do have to guaranteed issue and pre-existing conditions coverage is a mandate under the bill. But the real objection here by the left is that we take money and power out of Washington and end single-payer health care as we know it.
Leslie Marshall is a syndicated radio host and a Fox News contributor, and Chris Bedford is editor-in-chief for the Daily Caller News Foundation. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
So
morning,
whether
Heather.
or not this repeals Obamacare is in question, we have a solid no from Rand Paul, and we have a tweet that he has just put out, and the tweet says, calling a bill that keeps most of Obamacare repeal doesn't make it true. That's what the swamp does. I won't be bribed or bullied. So, Leslie, let's begin there.
Well, first of all, I don't think that it's a good bill if you have to bribe or bully anybody in your own party to vote for it. And with respect to Senator Lindsey Graham, all due respect, he is completely wrong. Democrats are not concerned. The majority of Democrats are not on board with single payer, as we saw a handful of Democrats were behind Bernie on that. What they fear is not the power going to the states, which, by the way, a bipartisan group of governors throughout the United States fear themselves, because they don't know what's going to happen to their state and if they're going to have the finances. What is the concern of not only these governors but the Democratic Party? The millions of people that won't have health care, the pre-existing conditions that aren't truly protected under this plan, and of course the fact it falls off a cliff in 2027. The list goes on. This is not a good plan, and this is why there are some Republicans that are against it and so many Democrats against it.
It does raise the question, though, Chris, because Lindsey Graham himself worked as part of a bipartisan group, including Democrats, back in 2007, and he said they came up with this plan. It was called the State-Based Health Reform Act, and that actually gave even more freedom to the states.
Yes, and one of the most toxic legacies I think we have from the last president is he's made healthcare a partisan issue now, and that's not good for Americans. No Republicans signed on to the original Obamacare deal that was jammed through on Christmas Eve, and no Democrats, despite what they say, are going to sign on with Republicans. They're all saying, this is your mess. But what they should be saying is, does this help our constituents? Because of that, you get all kinds of demagoguery, like we just heard, like, oh, it's going to kill you, it's bad for you, this healthcare plan is going to hurt babies. And then you have people like Jimmy Kimmel out there saying that this doesn't pass the Kimmel test. Well, there's a problem with that. Obamacare doesn't pass the Kimmel test. No healthcare system we've had in this country passes the Kimmel test. So we need to be a little bit more realistic. And to be realistic, I don't think the Democrats are going to help the GOP on this one bit.
Leslie, what do you think? How do you think this will impact Democrats? We've been talking about how it will impact Republicans moving forward in terms of midterms. What if Democrats, throw up a wall again and we still go nowhere?
Well, first of all, I, as a Democrat, say that my party for the past 2 weeks has not been doing what they need to do. And overall, because single payer is not going to pass and they know it, that's why you don't have a majority of Democrats supporting it, you need to come up with a plan that is better than this, and to reach across to those Republicans, maybe not a Rand Paul, but like a Susan Collins, that say, hey, let's sit down and do this, not for the party and politics, but for the people. Because the people are not only going to be in a position to reelect these individuals, left or right or not, but the people are going to be most affected. And that is the concern not only of Democrats, but of these governors state by state. This is not a good plan. And quite frankly, Obamacare needed to be fixed, and that's why the majority of Americans say don't repeal it, don't replace it, fix it.
But yet we have, Rand Paul saying that this actually keeps 90% of Obamacare. So, if you can't make Democrats happy with that, what can you make them happy with? Chris?
Well, and the Heritage Foundation joined him. They said, but they took a different tact. And usually those guys are known as being hardline bomb throwers. They said, this is not repeal. This is not what Republicans promised that they were going to do, especially Republicans like Murkowski and Senator Collins, who right now might not vote for it. But it is a step in the right direction, and unscrewing this thing and sending some power back to the states and bringing in some other stakeholders. And I think Republicans actually should be worried about single payer coming from the Democrats, because, as you said, not every politician in the Democratic Party has signed on to this, but all of the alleged leaders have. Bernie Sanders, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, the people that were talking about running for the presidential nomination for the Democratic Party in 2020, they've all signed on to this, and Republicans better fix it or they're not going to have their chance.
Let's talk once more about those three Republicans that we just had up there, McCain, Collins, and Murkowski. Leslie, you think that this could come down specifically to Murkowski out of those three?
Yes, and I think other people agree with me, which is why it seems that Obamacare is repealed in this plan for every state, it would seem, except Alaska, which is odd. I mean, who is senator of Alaska? In addition to that, there's a little thing we like to call the Alaska Purchase, and they're definitely trying to cater to Lisa Murkowski with her concerns and her state's concerns, but still, the governor of her state is entirely against this plan because of the demographics of Alaska being so rural, but yet such an expensive state to live in, and the demographics of the people and the health care that they need there.
And the amount of money given to states with these block grants, which is how it would lay out, is based on whether or not the state previously under Obamacare had decided to expand Medicaid. So we'll see what happens and if there, in fact, is a vote next week. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.